I want you to imagine something for me. Imagine you're downtown and you want to cross a busy street. There are cars covering the intersection, so you walk just a few steps to the right and cross. You look up, and to your surprise, a picture of your face is projected on a giant billboard. It has your name on it, an identification number, and reads transgression, jaywalking. Your small transgression has been caught by a multitude of CCTV cameras and processed in seconds by artificial intelligence. This may seem like a dystopian story, but it is in fact the reality for many Chinese citizens. You see, China is what is called a digital authoritarian government, a government that uses technology to suppress, control, and surveil its population. In the example I just mentioned, video cameras and artificial intelligence were used to not only conduct mass surveillance, but to control future behavior through public humiliation. This is not the only example of digital authoritarianism present. Issues such as intentional disinformation dissemination and mass surveillance have increased rapidly in recent years. These issues are seen as the natural output of authoritarian governments gaining access to new technologies. This trend has fostered the conception that digital authoritarianism is exclusive to these authoritarian regimes. Democratic countries like the United States have been seen to take on the role as savior to these issues through targeted sanctions and other legal measures. Do we really believe, though, that dangerous usages of technology are exclusive to these authoritarian regimes? Is the United States not equally culpable for using technology in this problematic way? As the democracy of the United States is increasingly challenged, it is imperative that we hold our government and its institutions accountable for these usages. Today, I want to do just that. Today, I want to attack America's status as a fighter of digital authoritarianism and instead illuminate its guilt as a digital authoritarian itself. Let's take, for example, facial recognition technology. Facial recognition technology is a software that can identify your face and match it to a pre-existing facial database. Facial recognition technology is often associated with surveillance in Russia and China, but it is actually widely used in the United States, most chillingly in law enforcement. Facial recognition technology is especially problematic as it relies on an algorithm with much higher misclassification rates for people of color. Misclassification rates for these populations are 20 to 30%, in stark contrast to 0 to 1% for white individuals. Consequentially, any problematic usage of facial recognition technology disproportionately impacts these populations. In 2020, mass protests broke out across the country in response to police brutality. These protests demonstrated citizens' right to free speech and organization. Law enforcement was eager to challenge this right. According to a report by the United States Government Accountability Office, 6 federal agencies used facial recognition technology on pictures they took during these protests. They justified these intrusions with claims of alleged criminal activity, but have yet to release any more detailed and compelling reasoning to the public. The use of facial recognition technology during these protests is a stark example of digital authoritarianism. After learning that this technology was used during the protests, many protesters were dissuaded from attending future demonstrations. They feared that the usage of this technology could lead to their identification. For people of color, there was an even graver concern. You see, because of the faulty algorithms I mentioned earlier, these algorithms had even led to wrongful arrests. Because of this, these people were especially afraid to attend these protests. In this way, law enforcement weaponized technology to quell especially people of color's right to free speech and organization. What's more is that by attending these protests, people unknowingly became subjects of mass surveillance while simply exercising their right to free speech and organization. This usage of technology for repression and surveillance is a clear example of digital authoritarianism. Unfortunately, facial recognition algorithms are used for many more examples of digital authoritarianism. One key component of digital authoritarianism is mass surveillance. Mass surveillance is the surveillance of a large part of the population without their consent or any alleged criminal activity. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, used facial recognition technology to conduct this mass surveillance. DMV databases are databases of many pictures of American drivers turned over to be safe, legal, and compliant on the road. The FBI and ICE turned what was this act of pure civil obedience into a facial recognition database without these people's consent. Without the authorization of Congress or state legislatures, law enforcement created a mass surveillance system with unprecedented capabilities. This surveillance system contains 641 million pictures of American citizens, 641 million. And between the years of 2011 and 2018, they used this investigative tool 340,000 times. What's especially concerning is that databases like these are not subject to the usual investigative safeguards. Typical criminal investigations require a federal subpoena or court order to make sure the person they are investigating has indeed conducted alleged criminal activity. This limits the amount of mass surveillance that law enforcement can conduct on innocent citizens. Facial recognition databases are not subject to these same safeguards. Law enforcement can search through facial recognition technology whenever they would like without higher court approval. For example, with the DMV database, law enforcement simply sent pictures of individuals they wanted to investigate, whether there was basis to do so or not. They sent these pictures to DMV experts, and they would send them back any potential matches. No court order or federal subpoena to be found. Databases like these are only increasing in users. As long as pre-existing video capabilities and facial databases exist, any synthesis of the two can spark a new surveillance system. Examples such as the Ring security camera and retail security cameras have already sparked concerns as companies move to increase their surveillance capabilities. We live in a time where facial recognition technology can be assumed to be used in your local retail or grocery store. The keyword in that sentence is assumed. Facial recognition technology is rarely announced, leaving customers to guess if they are being watched or identified. Some places like New York require the disclosure of facial recognition technology, but these requirements are often bypassed. Unless customers are magically able to find out that these places are using facial recognition technology, it is extremely difficult to hold them accountable. This loophole has led businesses often to not be transparent about their use of facial recognition technology. When we are left to assume we are being watched by this technology, it is almost akin to the type of social control found in robust digital authoritarian regimes like China and Russia. There is, of course, always the argument that this technology is for our safety, that it'll perhaps catch shoplifters or deter repeat offenders. But if this technology can be found in any space and mistake your face for another one, perhaps even a criminal one, 20 to 30% of the time, couldn't you be expected to be deterred even slightly from entering these spaces? Digital authoritarianism is a topic that extends far beyond the borders of Russia and China. It is a pervasive issue that penetrates even the United States, with federal entities using technology in ways that surveil, repress, and control the population with clear racist undertones. As more and more technology emerges, it is imperative that we hold our government accountable to use it safely, democratically, and ethically. The fight against digital authoritarianism starts at home, and it is up to us to safeguard our freedoms and values in this new and threatening digital age. Thank you.